He wasn't the biggest guy on the field, but he played like he owned it. A two-time captain, a Sugar Bowl MVP, a Bryant-era leader with a heart that matched his toughness. From Mountain Brook to the mountaintop of college football, Major Ogilvie defined what it meant to wear the crimson jersey with pride. This is his story. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Yale, Alabama, the official NIL collective supporting Crimson Tide student athletes on and off the field. Learn more and get involved at yay-alabama.com.
Well, appreciate it, Rick. We are honored to have Major Ogilvie with us today. Major grew up in Birmingham, a 1977 graduate of Mountain Brook High School, where he was part of 2 state championship teams. He came to Alabama as a freshman tailback in 1977 and had a remarkable year with the Tide, both individually and team-wise. As a team during his time at Alabama, Alabama had a 44-4 record, winning 3 SEC championships in 77, 78, and 79, and 2 national championships in 78 and 79. Individually, as a halfback in the Wishbone Offense in his 4-year career, Major rushed for 1,738 yards, 252 carries, which is almost a 7 yards per carry average, and he scored 25 touchdowns. He made first-team All-SEC in 1979 as well as academic All-American. Major is the only player in history to have played in and won 3 Sugar Bowls. And he and Herschel Walker from Georgia are the only 2 players in history to have scored in 3 different Sugar Bowls. He was MVP of the 80 Sugar Bowl against Arkansas and the 81 Cotton Bowl game against Baylor. And along with Randy Scott, Major was selected as team captain in 1980. And he was also selected to the Crimson Tide's all-decade team for the 70s and the 80s. In 2014, he was selected into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, and in 2017, he was selected to the inaugural Sugar Bowl Hall of Fame. So, Major, it is our honor and pleasure to welcome you to the Crimson Chronicles podcast.
Tommy, Rick, good to be with y'all. Looking forward to having a little fun tonight.
Yeah. Well, Major, before I ask the first question, I want to tell you where we first met. And I know you don't remember this, but on the plane to Lincoln, Nebraska in 1977, I was sports editor of the Crimson White, and Coach Bryant was gracious enough to allow me to fly with the team to Lincoln. You were a true freshman, and we met on that airplane. And you don't remember it, but I sure do. And it's been an honor to know you for that long. But that was a great trip other than the game itself. I kid Jeff Rutledge about that game quite often, throwing 5 interceptions, but we won't talk about that. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. What made you choose Alabama? And what was it like walking into the storied program of Coach Bryant and the Alabama Crimson Tide?
You know, Tommy, really looking back at that, I don't think I ever really considered other schools. And I say that to you because our high school teams were extremely successful. And it's a lot of fun to play on winning teams. It is a whole lot of fun. So I visited 5 different schools: Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. My dad's oldest brother played for General Neyland in 39 and 40. And then I went to LSU and Auburn. All of those schools had great accounting schools, which I was interested in from an academic standpoint. But keep in mind, we were playing high school ball in 76, and frankly, at times it was a little hard to travel to the schools and get back because we were playing for state championships. And at that point, I learned that we were getting everybody's best game, just like I would learn at Alabama. But, you know, I remember when I was at Tuscaloosa for being recruited, and Coach Bryant spoke to all the recruits that were present. And I never will forget to the whole crowd and all the parents, he said, don't come here unless you want to do the things it takes to play for a national championship. Mm-hmm. And when I was little, my Uncle Hayden Riley was a coach and came on early on when Coach Bryant came back. And so, I went to games prior to that, a lot of Alabama games, and I went to a couple of Tennessee games too, because we always follow Tennessee. But when you put it down on paper, which my father and I did, it was a pretty clear-cut, even decision to make. And what a blessing it has been my entire life. And how grateful I am to Coach Bryant for giving me the opportunity and all the good things the University of Alabama has done for me.
You were a part of some legendary teams, the 77 through 79 teams. Those are my favorite teams of any teams in the history of Alabama football. And I think there's so many of us that grew up during that time that just remember the sheer dominance. Talk to us a little bit about what stands out about the culture of Alabama football under Coach Bryant. What was it like, the vibe in the building and the feelings among the players?
So, Rick, again, I had enjoyed playing on football teams that had won, and I never played in a game in Alabama that we didn't expect to win, that I didn't expect to win. And I don't mean that arrogantly or anything. It was just a fact. And, we were so well prepared by our coaches and Coach Bryant, and, it was a great time. And keep in mind, I was there at Coach Bryant's 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd seasons. And that was just a great time to be there with all the experience and all the things that were in place for us to come play football at the university and have a whole lot of fun, and we did.
Major, I've got a question about the Wishbone. You knew in advance that Coach was running the Wishbone. He had started it in 1971. The Wishbone is very popular still in terms of the culture of Alabama football. I mean, there's a new documentary out on the Wishbone. There have been several interviews about the Wishbone. It's still, especially with Alabama, Oklahoma, and Texas, sort of a legendary offense that people are still talking about it many years later. Watching it click was a thing of beauty. And was it difficult to learn, and what were its advantages, and were there any disadvantages of the Wishbone?
I can't think of a disadvantage, Tommy. In answer to your other two questions, in terms of difficult to learn, it was a hard offense to learn, and I saw the Wishbone show too, and, it just marvels to me that in 3 weeks that Coach Bryant and our coaches could install the Wishbone, because it's a pretty simple offense, but so much of it is based on timing, and it takes you a while to figure out that, because advantage for us was that not many teams ran the Wishbone, and there's a lot more finesse with it. There's a whole lot of timing. It's an offense that you have to think about and understand because it creates its own movement, if you will. And I played running back, and we had mentioned the Nebraska game a little earlier, which that was the second game that I was at Alabama. I've played in a lot of baseball, football, and basketball games. I don't think I've ever played as poorly as I played in that game. I just wasn't ready. And frankly, I hadn't figured out the Wishbone. If you're a running back, it's very simple, because there's just a few things you got to do. First of all, if you're a running back, you got to be able to hold the ball. If you fumble, especially with Coach Bryant, that was a no-no. It's an offense that you learn real quick that when you're running the ball, you better head north. Coach Bryant would get on the megaphone if somebody was trying to do something fancy and run east and west versus north. And the third thing you got to do is block. I was really blessed, and I'll always be grateful to Coach Bailey. We were in winter workouts after my freshman year, and we were walking downstairs. He said, "Why don't you come up to my office after y'all finish?" And I did. When I say it's a finesse, it's a movement type offense, But one of the things I really struggled with my freshman year was blocking because I was going out there and trying to hit somebody head on. Coach Bailey explained to me that in the wishbone, the ball attracts the defense. And so if you want to make a block, there's two things to it. Number one, stay between the defender that you're supposed to block and the ball carrier, and they'll come to you. And if you'll stand up rather than try to hit them at the knee or lower, they'll fall right over you. And, it just kind of resonated with me, and I never will forget that because it's not a simple offense to figure out. And you kind of have to think about it. After my meeting with Coach Bailey, it was made so much easier for me to understand and contribute to the success of the team because that right halfback blocks a lot more than the left halfback, and it was a good thing for me to figure out. But I think the other advantage is that the Wishbone is a great offense for taking not average players, but good athletes who want to play, giving them a chance to play because it's a team sport. And it really built a lot of success for us because Coach Bryant played so many players, and we would build experience and build on that for the years to come. It was a great offense. I enjoyed it.
I have one follow-up question to that. It also left the defense sort of perplexed when you did go back for a pass or you fake to the fullback or whatever and throw the ball. We had Keith Pugh on last year, and
Yeah.
Keith said every time he played, the defense knew they were going to pass because he was turning somersaults coming out of the huddle.
Yeah.
But
Of course, he was really canny at running out routes, and he just had the way of getting open. But it's like I've heard Coach Bryant say, if you want a passing game in the wishbone, you're going to get one-on-one the whole time because you got to honor the run. And if you don't, that's your problem.
Yeah, and in '73, which was several years earlier than you were there, they really opened it up, and their numbers were unbelievable. Gary Rutledge and Richard Todd as quarterbacks, and Wayne Wheeler, and several. Anyway, I just wanted to follow up with that.
No, it was a great passing offense, and occasionally we just needed a big play like that to keep them honest, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, Major, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Coach Bryant. He's portrayed to those of us that weren't around the program or part of the program just as, I mean, he's a towering mythic figure. But
Right?
what was he like behind the scenes in the locker room or in one-on-one exchanges that you had with him?
Just a great person to talk to. Rick, a lot of players, and I would Coach Bryant occasionally would come over to the dining hall and eat. And if there was a group of people sitting, he wouldn't sit with us. If somebody was sitting by themselves, he'd go sit with them.
Mm.
And, a lot of players were not that comfortable being around him. I was not one of those. I enjoyed my conversations with Coach Bryant. I would take a day off in the summertime when I knew he was going to be down in Tuscaloosa, and I would come down and meet with him in his office and talk. Most players were, they were that mystique that, he carried because, when he walked in a room, it would get quiet and everybody would recognize he was in there. He just carried that. But, just a really down-to-earth, good person that was one heck of a football coach.
Staying with the Coach Bryant theme may shape you personally, not just as a player, but as a man.
That's a hard question to answer, Tommy, because it wasn't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that I remember. It was 100 things. And it just, Coach Bryant was always going somewhere with you and leading you on and talking you up. And he had a unique way of doing that. But things were always moving forward, and you knew that. And you knew he told us all these things to help us, and a lot of them were not necessarily about being good football players, but about being good people and what we would face after the fact and all that. So you understood that he cared a lot about you. And I think that's one of the things that I'll always appreciate about playing for him and being with him and being in those big meetings, if you will. And it was the whole but just so many things that he did to help us and guide us and direct us at that age.
Major, I think we've said over and over again as we've interviewed guys that played for Coach Bryant that the emotion that tends to come out when his former players, when you guys are talking about him, it mostly seems to come from the things that he coached you in life and the stuff that he prepared you to do. Kind of along that line, what was the most challenging moment you had in your career at Alabama, and how did Coach Bryant approach you and coach you through that?
Well, Rick, I don't know that, Coach Bryant would necessarily approach players.
Mm.
I think he always understood that Coach Bryant cared. One of the most amazing things to me about him was, we had 105 players on scholarship and a lot of good walk-ons on our team. And he just seemed to kind of know what was going on with every one of those players on the field. And I'm going to use the word engineered, but it was almost like whether it was a practice or whatever, that he individually engineered kind of a plan for you. You just kind of felt that way. And you knew, or you believed, that he knew what you were doing on every play. We all know that he had skill set for a great coach and all those. But when you think about how he helped every player on the field during practice and planning practices and all that good stuff, that doesn't come across to me as real easy to do. But I always felt that way, and I think a lot of players felt that way, was that Coach Bryant was watching after you and doing everything he could to help you and help you get better and help you do good and help you have fun.
Major, as a follow-up to that, Mickey Herskowitz, who was one of the biographers of Coach Bryant and a good friend of his, actually said in one of his books that Coach Bryant had a third eye, where two eyes were looking at the field and knowing what all the X's and O's were, and a third eye was looking at you beyond the field and your private life and your grades and how's your mama and write home and those type things. And I don't know if that seems accurate that Mickey would say that.
That was part of the great experience playing for Coach Bryant, was that it was a great 4 years. That was just, that was part of what you got when you played for Coach Bryant at the University of Alabama, was just that, whether it be the organization, the people we were surrounded by, all the things he did to help us and introduce us to new people. I didn't take advantage of it, but my senior year, he arranged a dinner with a professor from Harvard that he had flown down here to go to dinner with me at the University Club. And we were talking about Harvard and MBA school and all that. But, that's just a perfect example of kind of what I'm trying to put into words.
That's amazing. Well, folks, you're listening to the Crimson Chronicles podcast, where Alabama football history lives. If you're enjoying this conversation with Major Ogilvie, help us to spread the word. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Share this episode with your fellow Tide friends, because we're building a community of people who love the legacy of Crimson Tide football, and we really love to have you with us.
Well, Major, you played a key role in the 79 Sugar Bowl against Penn State, as well as the 80 Sugar Bowl against Arkansas. What do you remember about these games, and how did it feel to go up against such coaching legends like Joe Paterno and Lou Holtz, and then even in the previous year, the 77 season, Woody Hayes? That had to have been pretty special. What do you remember about those three Sugar Bowls?
Well, after my sophomore year, I had the opportunity to go up to Columbus, Ohio, and I ate dinner that night at a big sports banquet, and I sat between Coach Hayes on the left and Coach Schembechler on the right, talking about something that was fun.
Oh, my goodness.
My goodness.
But, you're talking about three great coaches, and then you've got Coach Bryant. So, just another big game for us. Ohio State, it went really well. That Penn State game's the hardest hitting football game I've ever played in. And Penn State defended the Wishbone better than any team we played. Mississippi State was behind them, but Penn State had two tackles, Matt Miller, Bruce Clark, and the problem we had was that we audible 75-80% of our plays. And every team had one good tackle. The problem with Penn State was they had two. I mean, they were just unbelievably strong, quick, agile, lanky. I mean, they literally could read whether Jeff gave it off to their fullback or whether he kept it to go pitch on the end. And it was a dogfight all day long. I think most players will tell you that was the hardest hitting football game they ever played in. It was for me. And we were lucky to win. But the other thing I remember about the Penn State game, and I heard Coach Bryant say this, he never could remember a game that had more big plays in it. Big plays meaning momentum changing plays. Yeah. And then, of course, with the Wishbone, we were kind of limited because that Super Bowl was so loud, we couldn't audible. And so it really limited us. It wasn't real bad against Ohio State. It was bad against Penn State, and it was loud in there against Arkansas. But it was just that day at Penn State, it was just hard to hear in there. In the Arkansas game, that was just a great win. That 79 team, that was a good football team. I mean, that's the best football team I've ever played on. And from a Wishbone standpoint, when you've got an offensive line that's been together and got the kind of talent, skill that they had in 79, I mean, that was pretty nice for all of us. And that was a great group of leaders for our team, too. And they, between Dwight and Vince and Mike and Buddy and
Jim
Bunch, they'd been salt and peppered, and they started that freshman my sophomore year against Nebraska, and we had that long drive early on, and that drive paid us dividends for the rest of their careers.
Major, I was in 1977, I was a 9-year-old kid that was just starting to figure football out. And I've been an Alabama fan my whole life. You didn't get to put your feet under the table in my house unless you rooted for the Tide. But as a kid, it turned into really loving football starting at 9 years old. Watching that team in 1977, there was a dude that was wearing 42, and I picked him out and said, I want to be like that. Wore 42 all the way through my high school career. And it was because you were tough and you were versatile. You hard nosed on every play. Dude, what part do you think of your game did Coach Bryant admire the most?
Rick, I don't know how to answer that. I'd like to think that I was a leader for the team at times. I played a little bit of defense. I played a kicking game. I caught punts. A lot of times on the goal line, I was in there. He was good to me. Not sure I know how to answer that really the right way.
Well, Major, you were also close to Mrs. Bryant, right?
Yes.
Weren't y'all? Didn't you have a good relationship? And
she was a fun lady, and She was a lady. Yes, we rode together on the buses at the games. Joe Jones, my roommate, and I would always sit with her before and after. A special lady.
Shifting from the on the field to off the field to the practice field, do you have any favorite memory or story from an Alabama practice? Maybe something funny that happened or something that stuck with you over the years, maybe a story about the infamous tower or him coming off the tower or anybody getting kicked off the team. I'm thinking one particular good friend of mine that got kicked off and was allowed back on.
Yeah.
But anything funny from the practice field that you remember?
So, Tommy, our practices were really intense. So I don't associate the word funny or humorous or whatever with an Alabama football practice. I'll tell you that. But I will say this. The Nebraska game, the 78 first game, I tore a cartilage in my left knee, and it was a really kind of strange cartilage. And after that, I very seldom practiced on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday for the rest of my career. And so I would stand out on the side when we were running plays during practice. And Coach Bryant drove up in his golf cart one day. This was in the '79 season. And he came up and he says, you know, your brother's a better football player than you are. I I don't think I said anything. And then he didn't smile, but he kind of smirked and he looked at me and he said, yeah, he's meaner than you are. That's the one thing I can think of. But, you know, and I don't want to take away. I mean, we did have hard practices, but we had fun being together and supporting each other and helping each other be successful.
Yeah. Rick?
So, Major Coach Bryant's famous for saying, if you believe in yourself and have dedication and pride and never quit, you'll be a winner. The price of victory is high, but so are the rewards. How did that
Mhm.
philosophy play out in your life?
Well, I think life is challenging for all of us. So I think I would underline the word quit.
Mm.
I think you just got to go through things. You run into obstacles, but you just got to keep a smile on your face and keep going forward. One of the favorite things I liked about Coach Bryant was he was always talking about the future.
Mm.
I can remember him saying that tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life. It's what you've been waiting for. It's what you've been working for. He would tell us many times that during the game, you know, there's going to be some ups and downs. And, you know, life's kind of comparable to a football game. I mean, the big games, good teams you're playing against. I mean, you're going to win some and lose some. But, you know, I can remember him telling us many times that, you know, during the game, if you don't make a good play, get ready to make a good one on the next play. And I've just that's one of the things that's always kind of been with me in a big way is, you know, look to tomorrow or look to the next hour or look to the next day. You know, just stay after it.
Major, sort of related to that, after your playing days ended, how did the lessons you learned from Coach carry on into your career and personal life? I mean, did you ever come back and, of course, he was only there, I guess, two more seasons after
Right.
you were, but did you ever come back and just sit down and have a casual chat with him? And how did what you learned from him affect the rest of your life in both your personal life and your career?
You know, this happens just about every day to me. And I think about the things that he taught us and the things he shared with us to help us. Maybe not every day, but you know, when you get in a circumstance or a situation and you say, well, what should I do? You know, I gravitate back. I can't think of them every time, but I gravitate, well, you know, what Coach Bryant taught me, how can I relate that to this situation? He just left us with so many good things and taught us so many good things that I think that's about as good as I know to answer it from my standpoint.
Okay.
So, Major, as somebody who lived through some of the glory years of Alabama football, what do people today maybe misunderstand or overlook, either about Coach Bryant or about the era of Alabama football that you played in?
Hmm. Well, like I said a little earlier, it was a great time to be at the University of Alabama and play football and play for Coach Bryant and enjoy all the good things that he had put in place so that we could have a great experience. Times change, things get better, all that good stuff. But I wouldn't give in to anybody that they had a better time than I had when I was there because it fit me perfect and it fit our players perfect. And we really had a very close football teams, and it had a lot to do with our success. And we were a pretty salt and peppered group. I mean,
Mm.
you know, Coach Bryant could still have some of those practices that would test you and test you and test you some more and what have you. But, you know, you just got so much being able to kind of pass the mustard, if you will,
Mm.
and make it through those practices. But I was there when things were starting to change. And I say that to you because by my senior year, we still ran the wishbone, and we ran it a lot, but you could see things starting to change toward bigger, more exciting plays, if you will. I was there during the time where Coach Bryant had moved toward the bigger players, particularly on the defensive line. So there were a lot of changes, but again, I wouldn't trade my days for anything in the world. It was a great time to be in college, be a college football player, and be at the University of Alabama. And you know, I mean, we lost 4 games, and I wish we wouldn't have. But at the same time, we won 44, and that was a lot of fun.
Right.
Well,
And
Major, kind of related to that. Rick, do you have a question?
no, I was just going to make the comment that I think a lot of young fans today, I don't think they really understand how good those years were. And I think we've experienced something over the last 18 years that has been incredible, but it's no more incredible than what those of us that lived through the 60s and 70s experienced in those years. And that's a pretty cool thing to have as a part of your legacy.
So, we at the university we've been so blessed to have great coaches. Coach Wade, Coach Thomas, Coach Bryant, Coach Dollins, Coach Saban, and now Coach DeBoer. We had that red jersey, and we wore that red jersey, and that was always important to all of us, that we carry on the tradition that the previous players and coaches established. It was a big motivating factor for us to go out there and do our best. And I say that to you because one of the other things I really admired about Coach Bryant and playing for him was Coach Bryant didn't teach you to be better than somebody else. He taught you to be your very best. And there's something to say that for that today, because these playoffs and the way they go, you just got to be better than the other team. But, that 1977 team, somebody asked him, well, are you disappointed that y'all didn't win the national championship? Now, I remember I read, Coach Bryant said, well, if we'd won all our games 100-0, there wouldn't have been any doubt about who the national champion was. And that was just, that, again, that supported, let's be our best.
Well, Major, one thing we're trying to do with our Crimson Chronicles podcast is not only to bring back memories for our age folks and even the older folks, but to allow this younger generation to learn about Coach Bryant and Alabama football. I mean, what does it mean to you to have been part of that tradition, and what do you hope this younger generation of our players and fans remember about those days?
Well, there's a lot of things that have gone into us winning all the football games that we've won over the last 100 and some odd years. We have great fans. We have great support from the university. We've got a great tradition of great coaches and a winning tradition, and the red jersey, and making the University of Alabama proud that we wore that red jersey, and the way we played and the way we represented it. I think that red jersey is the comment I would make to all our players, that just know there's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and a lot of other things behind that. Always know that's your friend.